Hey folks, it's Lou with What If Resources for Just In Case Preparedness, and today's video is going to be about wilderness survival, okay? But what I thought I might share with you is where the inspiration for this content came from. And that was a book that I was reading a couple of years ago that was actually about wilderness first aid. And in that book, the author had put in a little piece of information there that I thought was really intriguing and directly related to wilderness survival. And what that was he felt like there were three tasks that after any traumatic injuries had been dealt with, right? Major bleeding, obstruction of airways, broken bones, things like that. Once those traumatic injuries had been dealt with, there were three tasks that should be completed in a very rapid fashion, okay? So he had assigned a certain amount of time that each one of these tasks should be able to be completed in. And one of those was you should be able to build a shelter in 5 minutes. Any of you that have ever built a shelter, you know how challenging just building a shelter is, let alone to do it within 5 minutes, okay? So we're going to talk about that. And then the next task was to be able to build a sustainable fire. And we've talked about the definition of a sustainable fire on this channel before in some previous videos. Within 5 minutes. Okay, so that can be rather challenging as well. But then the third task was to be able to boil water within 5 minutes. Okay, boiling water directly relates to wilderness survival, obviously, to be able to disinfect water for consumption, but it also relates to wilderness first aid as well, and we'll talk briefly about that. Again, the content is predominantly, for this video, is going to be about wilderness survival, but we'll briefly mention some of these first aid things that relate to it as well. But with that being said, all three of those tasks are supposed to be able to be completed within 15 minutes. And think about that for a second. So in wilderness survival, there's always 7 categories, right? First aid, navigation, signaling, shelter, fire, water, and food, right? So the big 3, though, that people really say, hey, once first aid has been addressed, if you can accomplish shelter, fire, and water, even if you cannot successfully accomplish the other 3, being navigation, signaling, and food, you can still hypothetically survive on average for 3 weeks. So just accomplishing those big 3 after first aid has been addressed, that's a huge accomplishment, huge accomplishment. But to be able to wrap our heads around the fact that we might be able to accomplish those things within 15 minutes, that's pretty incredible. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about that, because obviously what the author had intended us to take away from that was to A, have some of the correct gear with us when we step into the wilderness, but B, be familiar with that gear. And I don't just mean look at it and touch it and hold it. I mean practice with that gear as well, and become incredibly efficient with that gear. Practice some techniques, practice some different orientations for shelter, as an example, things like that. Try to find some of your most favored fire lay, some of the ones that you're most successful with. Just because your buddy's really good at the teepee fire lay doesn't mean that you might not be really good at the log cabin fire lay or the haystack fire lay or something like that. So anyway, the idea is to get out and to really practice and hone our skills to a point to where we can accomplish the big 3 wilderness survival task within 15 minutes. Okay, so today's video, we're going to briefly discuss each one of those tasks. We're going to briefly discuss some of the gear that we might bring along. But this is really an introductory video for a series where we're going to have 3 follow-up videos to this video, to where we go very, very deep into each one of those categories and the gear and the configurations and the way to be able to pack that gear so that we can deploy it as rapidly as possible, etc., etc. So let me get a couple of things out. Let me get some stuff set up, and please stick around. Thanks. All right, folks, thanks for sticking around. So we're going to get a little bit of gear out here. And obviously, if we're going to construct a shelter in 5 minutes, we're not going to be building a debris hut, right? We're going to have a little bit of gear to help assist us in being able to construct a shelter. Now then, also same thing with fire. If we're going to build a sustainable fire in 5 minutes. We're not going to be able to do that by going out and collecting and the components and carving the sticks and everything to build a friction fire with, right? We're going to have to bring along a little bit of gear. So when we look at this gear, one thing I want to get out very first is my first aid kit. Okay, we're not going to go over the contents of this or anything, but I got to thinking about it, and I don't want anybody to walk away after watching this video or watching this series where we discuss being able to build a shelter and build a sustainable fire and boil water within 15 minutes, that is meant to lead you to believe that if you can accomplish those 3 tasks in that amount of time, that you don't need a wilderness first aid kit. Or some people refer to it as an IFAK kit, an individual first aid kit. You always want to bring a first aid kit with you. We have other videos where we talk about the contents and we go over some of the things that you may choose to bring with you, or you may elect not to bring those with you. That's your prerogative. But whatever you do, don't leave your first aid kit at home just because you master these skills. Okay, this very important piece of kit right there, first aid kit. All right, folks, so obviously if we're going to erect a shelter in 5 minutes, we're going to need some gear, so we're going to go over some of that. Now, in the next video, the second video in this series, is when we'll actually get very deep into that, and we'll show you some orientation techniques. We'll talk about different styles and different methods and all that good kind of stuff. But today we're just going to get out a little bit of gear and some of the things that you would want to bring with you really anytime you go out in the wilderness is going to be some cordage, such as some paracord. Another type of cordage that other people like to bring with them when they go to the outdoors is some number 36 bank line, some tarred bank line. And then some people choose to also bring some jute twine with them, okay? Now then, sneak preview of the next video where we actually construct shelter. Carrying this cordage in this configuration, you're not going to be able to erect a shelter in 5 minutes. Okay, we're going to take some of this cordage in the next video. We're going to take some of this cordage and we're going to go ahead and cut some of it to length. We're going to go ahead and tie some knots. And we're going to be able to do, now I'm going to do this in the outdoors, but this is something that you're going to be able to do while you're at home or while you're at the park or while you're out camping next time, whatever it is that you enjoy doing. But get some of your kit out and prepare it in advance and kind of store that away in your, whatever, your haversack, your backpack, your canoe, your tackle box, your glove box and your four-wheel drive, whatever it is. But you'll want to go ahead and pre-establish some of these configurations ahead of time. Don't carry your stuff like this. It'll take forever to get it apart and actually do what we need to do with it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and set that down real quick. Another thing that you'll want is some tools. Okay, we always carry our wilderness knife with us. Some people call them survival knives. Some people call them Rambo knives. You can call it whatever you want, but I call it a wilderness knife. And we've gone over in some of the other videos on this channel, we've gone over some of the characteristics that a good wilderness knife should possess. So watch some of those videos if you're curious about that. Another thing that we would want to do is bring some type of cover. Right now there's a variety of covers out there. Some are tarps. Some of those are those really thin emergency blankets, right? They only cost like $1 or $2 or something like that. There's certainly nothing wrong with having some of those in, or one of those or 2 of those or 3 of those or whatever in your IFAK kit, your wilderness first aid kit. There's nothing wrong with having those in there, but you're going to want something in addition to that if you're actually going to have a true sheltering component that can withstand some of the weather that you may experience in the wilderness. So with that being said, you can choose to bring some additional pieces of gear like a tarp. That's certainly up to you, but if you're trying to be a little bit more compact, a little bit more minimalist, you may just simply elect to use your poncho for this particular cover component. Now, I keep mine in a waxed canvas bag, and I do that to help prevent my poncho from getting a lot of holes in it. Obviously, a poncho is, under regular conditions, is just simply meant to keep you dry if it's raining outside, and I certainly feel like the vast majority of people who step into the outdoors or step into the wilderness should be carrying a poncho. But what we'll want is what you probably should consider upgrading your poncho to, in case you find yourself in a wilderness first aid scenario or a wilderness survival scenario, is a poncho that has a little bit heavier meal, perhaps is even made out of some ripstop type equipment, something that's very, very durable. And in addition to that, a poncho that would have these eyelets in the end. So there's quite a few of these types of ponchos out there. A variety of brands make these ponchos. Again, we're not trying to get brand specific on this channel, at least not very often. But there's a handful of brands that make manufacturers that make these types of ponchos out there. So in the next video, we'll show how to really kind of put some of all of this together. Now, in addition to that, and we've talked about this on some of our previous videos as well, in addition to a knife, experts certainly suggest that we have with us, and again, this can be used just under regular conditions for a variety of things, but if you find yourself in an emergency, whether it be wilderness survival or whether it be wilderness first aid, having a folding saw is ideal. It makes a lot of tasks very, very efficient, and it's also going to help aid in making or erecting a shelter in 5 minutes or less. That I can guarantee you. So consider having a folding saw with you as well. Now then, when we get to the component of making fire, we may or may not use some of this gear in the third video of this series, where we cover the fire component, being able to successfully make a sustainable fire in 5 minutes. We may use some of this gear, we may not, but certainly one thing that you would want to do is be able to bring a heat source with you that can create an open flame immediately, right? You don't want to be messing around. I think we talked about this. We don't want to be messing around with friction fire. And in addition to that, even solar ignition or flint and steel, things like that, those take a little while, especially to gather up the components for like a tinder bundle. So those aren't really techniques that we want to employ if we're going to make a sustainable fire in 5 minutes. We're going to want an immediate open flame type source. And one of those, obviously, as an example, is a Bic lighter. And then another thing that you may choose to bring with you is just simply some emergency matches, some storm-proof type matches. And then you're going to want some type of fire tinder, emergency fire tinder, something that can perform in wet conditions, windy conditions, etc. Something that can immediately take a flame or a spark if you have to resort to that. Oftentimes on our wilderness knives, on our sheath, we, in addition to having a lighter in our pocket or in our gear, we also oftentimes carry a ferrocerium rod. And so because of that, and understanding that we may have to resort to that, maybe something is wrong with our lighter, it won't work, maybe it got wet or something, we can't recover that fast enough to be able to meet this 5-minute criteria. So whatever your emergency fire tinder is that you choose to bring with you, make sure that it also works well with the ferrocerium rod. And also make sure you bring a ferrocerium rod in your kit as well. And then whenever we're talking about being able to boil water within 5 minutes, clearly we're going to want some gear for that, right? And in the fourth video in this series, we'll go over some of the characteristics that our gear should have to be able to accomplish boiling water within 5 minutes. However, generally speaking, you're always going to want to bring some type of a canteen with you, or some type of a vessel, or some type of a container to carry water with. But if you can ensure that you have one that's made out of metal that you can boil some water, or maybe even you can melt some snow or melt some ice with, that's certainly the type of a container that you would want to bring, or at least one of the containers. Oftentimes when I'm out west, I bring 2 containers, I bring 2 canteens, simply because water is somewhat sparse. And so I like to bring 2 canteens with me. One is metal, and one is oftentimes plastic. And the reasoning for that is because oftentimes when I'm out west, it's very, very cold, and I don't want to put metal up to my lips to consume my potable water with, so I'll use that plastic vessel to actually drink from, but I always have a metal canteen with me as well. And we'll discuss why in the fourth video of this series, where we boil water in 5 minutes. We go over some of the gear that can help ensure that we can do that within that time frame. And that's certainly something that you're going to want to bring with you. Now, in addition to that, those are the main contents that are going to relate directly to this video series. And you'll notice the vast majority of that kit are things that we're going to use anyway on a regular basis when we're not in an emergency. Of course we're going to want to have a canteen. Of course we're going to want to have a poncho. Of course we're going to want to be able to make a fire. What if we want to, make some coffee or something like that, or have a cookout, or whatever the case is. But there's always some generic gear that experts suggest that we bring along, and I'm not going to go through all of that generic gear. We have other videos on that, but one piece of gear that I do want to get out, I've shown this before in some of our other videos, but it's just simply a shemagh. A shemagh can do so many things. It can aid in your firecraft. Certainly, it's even considered somewhat of a sheltering component, at least as far as like trying to protect yourself from the sun, trying to protect yourself from breathing in cold air, and even first aid applications. We've briefly discussed that in some of our other videos as well. So I just wanted to get out that shemagh again too, to kind of show you some of that. So let me put some of this stuff away, and we'll see if we can't finish up today's video. All right, folks, thanks for watching this video. And like I said, this is an introductory video to a series where we'll have 3 more follow-up videos to this video, where we go over how to erect a shelter in 5 minutes, how to build a sustainable fire in 5 minutes, and how to boil water in 5 minutes. So if you like what you've seen, please hit like and subscribe. And if you're already a subscriber to this channel, you'll probably notice that we recently have released a handful of how-to videos on a variety of knots and how to tie them. And that wasn't by coincidence. We're going to be using a handful of those knots in the next video, the follow-up video to this one in this series, video number 2, where we construct a shelter in 5 minutes. So also, if you get a chance, run over to our website. It's www.whatifresource.com. There's a lot of resources on there, including an abundance of information, which includes blogs, a lot of just how-to stuff, a lot of tips and tricks, even some recipes. There's some survival stories. There's some first aid stories too. So if you get a chance, run over there, and we hope we'll see you on the next video. Thanks.